Okay, we are now live. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to one of our programs as part of Historians of Catholic Mexico, HisCat Mex events for the year for 2024-2025. I'm Nathan Elstrand. I'm a postdoc research scholar at San Diego State University, and I'm one of the co-coordinators of HisCat Mex. And we have the pleasure today of having two individuals from the University of Dayton, the Marian Library, and so glad to have them here today. We have Michelle Jennings and Henry Hanley, and I'll read their biographies, and then they'll provide a presentation for about the next half hour, and then the remaining amount of time that we have will be a question and answer session. So to start off with Henry Hanley is responsible for the collection, development, and management of the Marian Library's published materials, from early printed books to recent scholarly monographs related to Mary, the Mother of Jesus. They provide reference support, teach special collection instruction sessions, and curate Marian Library exhibits in collaboration with colleagues across the university libraries. Henry also serves as the library collections co-liaison for religious studies. Today, we also have Michelle Jennings. Michelle Jennings is the Special Collections Instruction Librarian and Assistant Professor at the University of Dayton's Marian Library, where she develops and implements instructional opportunities with primary sources and the Marian Library's collections, curates exhibits and programming, acts as performing arts liaison librarian, and stewards the Marian Library's archival holdings. Michelle currently serves as a co-liaison for the departments of theater, dance, and performance, technology, and music. So once again, welcome, Michelle and Henry. We're glad to have you here. The floor is yours.
Thank you. We're glad to be here. I just want to start by saying thank you for folks who are joining us right now, and I suppose in the future. I want to thank Nathan and Ricardo for inviting us to share with you today, and Dr. Rebecca Jansen for connecting us with you. She was a former fellow at the Marian Library and got us into contact. I also want to thank excuse me, Dr. Elizabeth Cejudo for preparing the lovely flyer that was sent out. And with that, I am actually going to go ahead and share our slides. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so that is who we are. Welcome. Thank you. And Henry, are you ready to take it away?
I am.
Okay.
Next slide. Nathan, thank you for your introductions. Just to connect faces to names again. I'm Henry. Michelle is Michelle. And here are our official titles. Michelle works with archives as well as instruction. I work with books. And I don't know that there's much else to add here. So we can talk about the library. The Marian Library is one of three special collections at the University of Dayton. Sometimes we're mistaken for the main library, but because we're all about Mary, we are a substantial but rather niche collection compared to the rest of the library. So it's a global collection. We have materials from every continent but Antarctica, and we have over 100 languages represented. It's a legacy of collecting from 1943 to the present. The library was founded in 1943 as a sort of commemoration or planned commemoration of the university's 100th anniversary in 1950. So it was founded in 1850. And spent a long time as a clearinghouse of information before there were really books. There are now over 100,000 books, as well as other materials. And they've supported things like the fellowship, things we'll talk about later on here in the presentation. But because UD is a Catholic university, sorry, my cat is here, so if you're meowing. It is very much based in the Catholic identities and interests of the Society of Mary religious order, the Marianists, so much so that it is sometimes called the Marianist Library. But we've had materials come from not just Marianists, but from various religious orders, from lay people, things that represent very official dogmatic interpretations of Mary, as well as sort of quasi-heretical, maybe even condemned, because we see ourselves not just as an expression of that Catholic identity, but as, I guess, as a research institute and as a research institute, Emory's research institute, as a research center for Marian materials, regardless of beliefs or even disciplines. We have a lot of things that connect different things. That's why we're religious studies, performing arts, different things like that, that we use to support the library. So I think that's what I've got, Michelle. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so I'm going to just walk you through our collecting areas at a really high level, and then we're going to go into more detail about collections that we think might be of particular interest. So as you can see here, those collecting areas are broken into three main categories, each of which has its respective curator. So as Rare Books and Print Collections librarian, Henry oversees our collection of books. Our collections of published materials document Marian theology and devotion across diverse genres and time periods, from more recent scholarly works all the way to medieval manuscripts and lots of things in between. The earliest item in this part of the collection dates to the 15th century, but I believe the earliest book that we have that was produced in Mexico dates to 1627. Yes, thank you. The next area of the collection, which I oversee, is our archives. Our archival collections document a broad range of Marian topics, including apparitions, shrines, Marian titles, Marian spirituality, and Marian Catholic material culture. Collections contain a variety of formats. This ranges from visual resources, audiovisual materials, artifacts, to papers, manuscripts, and records that document the history, activities, research interests, and devotional practices of people or groups or organizations that have a significant Marian dimension. The Marian Library also contains a collection of over 14,000 works of fine art and cultural objects, conceptualizing Mary. And the art collection is curated by our colleague, Bridget Retzloff. The paintings, prints, and sculptures in the collection depict Mary in a range of cultural and historic contexts, from retablos to more contemporary settings. Nativity sets or creches are a major collecting area, and we're going to talk about those more. But since this area of the collection began in 1984, 3,600 creches from around the world have been acquired by the Marian Library. Okay. So now that you have an overview of all those areas, let's spend some time talking about some specific collections that we think may be of particular interest to scholars studying Catholic Mexico. I'm going to start us off by talking about some of the archival collections, and some of our largest collections are of printed ephemera, including postcards, holy cards, and other ephemera from Marian shrines. Like many archives, these collections are described in the aggregate in our archives catalog, meaning that they are described as series or subseries, but of course, each individual item is not described. And at the end of our talk, I think I'll drop the links to the finding aids for our holy card collection, our postcard collection, and the shrine ephemera collection in the chat here, and maybe we can add that to YouTube somehow. Cool, thanks. Okay, so the holy card and postcard collections in particular are really quite expansive. The holy cards number around 10,000 items, and the postcards over 40,000. The holy cards, postcards, and shrine ephemera, they're all sort of subdivided in lots of different ways, but mostly into geographic locations for shrines. So that means that it's possible to locate imagery or printed materials from Marian shrines in Mexico, for example, quite centrally. So, for example, I would estimate that we currently have between 300 and 400 holy cards from shrines in Mexico alone. And these are not just the Basilica of Guadalupe. Many of these items arrived at the Marian Library through this broader worldwide network of the Society of Mary, of the Marianists, both through their missionary work and their provinces around the world. And so the collections in particular, the postcards and holy cards, document kind of cultural exchanges that were facilitated through mass print culture, mostly in the 20th century. And materials from the postcard collection, for example, can include personal inscriptions. One example is taken from Dr. Jansen's excellent narrative about her fellowship in the Marian Library. But she highlighted a postcard from Zacatecas, which portrayed Our Lady of Patrocinio de la Bufa, and it contains a handwritten description of the specific devotional practices at that shrine. And certainly in the vein of printed ephemera is our collection of hojas volantes, dating to the turn of the 20th century. They were produced by the print shop of Antonio Venegas Arroyo in Mexico City. And they really demonstrate the mixing of genres and themes that were occurring in broadsides during this time. Many of the broadsides reference alleged apparitions of Our Lady of Guadalupe or San Juan de los Lagos, but also reference political and social tensions during the Porfiriato and the beginnings of the Mexican Revolution. So notably, many of the broadsides also feature engravings of Jose Guadalupe Posada, of course, famous for his illustration of La Calavera Catrina, in one of Venegas Arroyo's broadsides. We don't actually have that specific engraving in our collection, but we do have some really fantastic illustrations, like the one you see here of La Anima Sola. In total, we have 22 broadsides from Venegas Arroyo and Posada. 21 of them have been entirely digitized. The remaining one will be joining the others very soon online. And again, that's another link that I will drop so that you can see that digitized collection. Okay. More about archives. A collection that may also be of interest, in part because it is so broad, is the Sutton file. This is a really large collection of newspaper clippings, around probably over 60,000, housed in vertical files in the Marian Library. This collection was amassed by a former Marian Library volunteer, and it still operates actually using a physical card catalog system that is not a stock photo. That is the card catalog for the Sutton files. Most of the clippings are derived from really mainstream Catholic publications and are decidedly from a US, if not really just an English-speaking perspective, but the entries are very, very expansive. And I tried to find a photo or like a statistic that would accurately represent the span of the Sutton file. But I'll just say that, for example, the entry on Mexico, not accounting for entries on specific states or topics or even major apparitions, just Mexico directs to a little over 400 newspaper clippings. And unfortunately, generating a web presence for this file would be an immense task that I'm not up for. So if there is a topic that you're looking for, I'm happy to take your questions and to over email and to do a little digging for you and see what we have. Okay, the last area of interest I want to highlight for you is our Realia collections. These include ex photos and milagros, rosaries, pilgrimage souvenirs, miraculous medals, and so on. Items from Mexico, especially those dedicated to veneration of Our Lady of Guadalupe, of course, are distributed across these collections. While this is not a terribly large part of the collection, especially when compared to the Sutton files, it's still, I think, a real collecting strength of ours in the sense that it sort of uniquely connects Marian material culture to everyday devotional practices, local observances, and family traditions. For those who are interested in material religion or related fields, I think that these items are particularly interesting. And again, these are not digitized. So this would be another case where getting in touch with us is a good starting point. Okay, so I'm going to move on to talking about the art collection since Bridget was actually on maternity leave when we set this all up. This is a very good transition point for me, though, to talk about the art collection, namely because they're really strongly related also to everyday devotional practices and material culture. And they have a lot of overlap with the realia in the archival collections, and that includes our collection of milagros and ex-votos and retablos. The Harrison collection, which you see a sampling of here, is a more recent acquisition from actually a former employee of University of Dayton, who collected ex-votos, milagros, retablos, and ceramic trees of life on her travels in Mexico, in the southwestern US, and throughout the rest of Central America. And these items I think are particularly interesting because many of them came to us as designed as souvenirs and are part of this running current of the collection of linking up these histories of travel and sort of the broader tourism industry, enabling this exchange or extraction, and giving us, those of us here in the United States, this picture of ecclesiastical and popular depictions of Mary. And many of these items have the Hecho in Mexico sticker at the bottom. And so there's this like interesting perspective on, who the global audience of Mexican handicrafts and popular religious traditions are. So when it comes to accessing these items or the others in our art collection, we have a collections database with photographs and item descriptions for many, if not most, of the items. However, because we have some problematic legacy data that we are on the long road toward repairing, including trying to resolve inaccuracies or gaps in the data, we don't right now have a means of providing public access to the database, but we can provide images and more information about specific artworks in relation to, for example, apparitions, titles, locations, and so on, again, after some email consultation. Okay, so now the famed nativities. Again, this is one of our collection highlights in the art collection. And like I mentioned before, we have thousands of sets from all over the world, including this ceramic vessel, which shows the story of Las Posadas in the round, and many others from Mexico or Mexican creators. I believe that this is one that has that Hecho Mexico sticker and was likely a souvenir. We are currently coming off the heels of a major annual seasonal exhibit of our nativities for the Advent and Christmas season. But this and our year-round display in our Crush Museum are one of the major ways that we connect with the public. And it offers a lot of instructional opportunities for demonstrating to students how the telling and retelling of a story across time and cultures changes or augments its meaning. Okay, so for those who are interested in contemporary representation of Marian devotion, I also wanted to highlight our current collecting, mostly in photography and printmaking, relating to sort of identity formation around the figure of Mary, especially for Mexican Americans. And the Virgin of Guadalupe in particular plays a lot in these images. And a lot of the work centers on interpreting Guadalupe, this symbol of national identity, in relation to modern urban setting centers of the diaspora, to motherhood, to inheritance and family tradition. This part of the collection includes photographs from migrant detention centers along the US-Mexico border, images of murals dedicated to Guadalupe in California, and modern prints honoring the Virgin of Guadalupe. So that's what I have for you for archives and art. And Henry is now going to tell you about our books.
Thanks, Michelle. So we have, as I said, over 100,000 books, and there's a very wide, I don't know, just like a lot of different things about Mary. It's very, feels like it's very narrow sometimes, but very deep. Other times very wide, but very intense. Not what you're looking for. So as Michelle mentioned, the earliest book we have printed in Mexico comes from 1627. We have about 200 books printed in Mexico in our rare books collection, but our research collections are also a large area where Mexico and titles of Mary, devotion to Mary, travel are all fairly well represented. This is hard to explain since I can't show you the stacks, but if you go to the stacks, there's an entire section for just every single book we have on Guadalupe, and it ranges for shelves and shelves and shelves. So in addition to monographs and series and things like the reference collection, we also have pamphlets, and those are also a really great connection to things in archives and art that depict or demonstrate how people were engaging in real time with these different sites and beliefs and items. But going back to the rare books a bit, we also have pamphlets there, and we also have quite a lot on printing history. I'll drop the links to the catalog and to this list of rare books at the end. But I prepared those too, so you can see kind of what we have. You can search for anything you're particularly interested in. These books are not often cataloged. They are cataloged. They're often not digitized, but we have a pretty good system for digitizing rare books in place if folks request them. I think that's all I've got, but I'm going to take another minute and set my pad down. Sorry.
While Henry does that, I will, I don't know, meow in place of his cat.
Sorry about that. But I'm ready for the next slide. So because I'm a rare books person and I'm very interested in printing history and printing culture, I feel like our collection of rare books in Mexico is really representative of that and really interesting. There's a lot of evidence of navigating sort of ecclesiastical authority. You can see here in this photo, here's the coat of arms of an inquisitor, who's like very prominently using Dominican symbols. He's mentioned on the title page of this work saying like, this is cleared through this person. It's a sermon printed by Paula de Benavides. We have all four generations of the Calderon printing dynasty present in the collections, which is a really great way to connect students to that. Oh, this just isn't a book. There's history, there's threads, there's narratives here, and connecting those resources to what students are studying. And I think that's all I've got here. The next slide, Michelle. So we've been dropping little hints, little bits of spice about things we do with the collections. And we work primarily with on-campus folks with exhibits and instruction, but we also have digital presence, and we also offer research fellowships like the ones that Dr. Rebecca Jansen and other folks have participated in. So on campus, we have exhibits. We don't just have the nativity as their year-round, but we also have a separate gallery space where we highlight different things. This spring, we're working with an artist on the faculty to feature Marian fiber arts and connect that kind of identity making and sense of not just fine art, but also like everyday things that you might use or you might have in your home. We have an instruction program, so we work a lot with students on campus, mainly undergrads, in different programs. So I work with religious studies a lot, but we also work with music, work with history and English folks. And their class might be just to come and visit and do a primary sources activity, or it might be let's co-curate an exhibit. Let's have students bring in what they learn to, in this case, the last one we did was an exhibit on Marian Catholic education. So we have these different ways of connecting the collections in the library to students learning, and a lot of different ways that that is publicly available. There's an exhibit in person, a digital exhibit, different materials that students produce. Some of those are in eCommons, which is our institutional repository. It has things from all across the university, but the link here goes to the Marian Library's collections. It has the broadsides that Michelle mentioned, as well as other special collections, faculty research, past and present publications. The Marian Library used to be very big into publishing things that were out of print or not translated into English. As part of that exchange, sometimes those are maybe not the most authoritative, but they also are sort of like a historic source of how people are engaging with Mary at this particular time, this particular way. Vatican II, as you might expect, is a big focus in a lot of those. And finally, we offer research fellowships. So we just ended our application cycle for the most recent year, but we'll open it again for 2026. Usually it's in the summer, short term, like 2 to 4 week fellowships, typically for various projects and their scholarship and artistic creation, a lot of different disciplines from art history to, gosh, what is it that, well, it's not actually that recent, but we had a local fellow who worked with her English 100 students to create an exhibit and connect Lourdes and the ideas of visiting a shrine, seeking healing, going on a pilgrimage to an English 100 class, which is really great. But we've had folks, we have a visiting fellowship every year. So we've had folks internationally, we've had folks working with like women's and gender studies and different ways that the collections intersect with their focus, even though it might just seem like it's just Mary. It is, I mean, there's a lot about Mary, but um, there's a lot to explore in connection to different scholarly interests. And I say that as somebody who works with printing history and works in the Marian Library. So next slide, Michelle. So that's about it. Here are our email addresses. If you're interested in following the library on social media, we're on Instagram, Facebook, the website formerly noted as Twitter, and post different things about what we're doing on campus and with folks pretty much, I don't know,
Yeah.
pretty actively. And before I'm going to forget, I'm going to post those links to the Flyers catalog and to the rare books in Mexico list.
I will do the same as soon as I'm not sharing my screen. I also wanted to add one last thing. Going back to our collection highlights, I thought about adding a slide that was like your collection here. We are growing the collection, and we know that scholars who are studying in this area are producing primary sources or they're producing their papers. If you have some such collection, we'd love to talk about it, particularly as it relates, of course, it is all about Mary. That is usually the first criteria. And once we cross that hurdle, then we can talk. So I think with that, I will stop sharing my screen and I will give you my links, and we are happy to take questions.
Wonderful. Oh, I was just going to
Sorry.
say, would you say thank you real quick to our presenters. Thank you so much, Michelle and Henry, for this presentation. We'll open up the Q&A. So, Selena, the floor is yours.
So I am also an archivist, and I was just wondering when you mentioned holy cards, are any of these holy cards like second or third class relics? And if so, like how do you manage like archival preservation along with like the veneration of the relic itself?
That's a really good question. The answer is yes. Not so much the holy cards, but we do have reliquaries in the collection. Generally speaking, we err on the side of preservation. We do work with like campus ministry. Rarely do reliquaries come into the mix. So generally speaking, our relics are in our vault. And actually our sort of sister collection at University of Dayton, the U.S. Catholic Special Collection, I would say, and Henry, you can correct me, that they also have probably a more substantial collection of relics and reliquaries. That doesn't really answer your question. The answer is we err on the side of preservation. Most use is scholarly. Occasionally, this isn't so much relic based, but holy card based. So we did work with campus ministry and another unit that I can't remember the acronym for our Latin American Heritage Month kind of display that they did of images of like titles from various countries. So most of those were pulled from our Holy Card collection because it's like, oh, you want to see, I don't know, Our Lady or like La Cobra or something for Cuba. I was like, well, I have a, you know, a great image, multiple. So in that case, it was just a scan and reproduce kind of situation. So thank you for your question.
Yes, thanks so much for that question. So we have some time to, Selena, if you have another question, or we do have someone watching right now on YouTube as well. Pues si hay preguntas, el espacio está abierto. So I'll leave a little space for that. Otherwise, I could use my moderator's prerogative. And in the meantime, thank you for these links in the chat, Michelle. I'll be posting these links to the YouTube as well concurrently. Great. Yeah, thank you for posting those. So I do have a question. So my question would just be, I always think this is interesting whenever we have archivists or librarians here chatting with us, is what do you find to be, for both of you, your favorite thing in the collection, in particular, tied to Catholic Mexico? Is there anything that really stands out to each of you that you think just has importance to both of your own respective interests and or you think might be of interest to the broader public and researchers?
Okay, I'll go ahead. Because I already kind of highlighted it. I am I don't know if it's a particular item, but a particular thing that I am interested in, which is obvious, I guess, because I am an archivist and librarian, I'm very interested in the provenance of a lot of our kind of souvenir type objects in the collection. And I already kind of hinted this, right? Like thinking about the development of a national identity and a culture of handicrafts, as well as, you know, like producing things for a global audience. So we have this amulet that actually I talked to Rebecca about because I was like, I genuinely don't know what's going on here. Um, it's like a large heart shape. It's called, I think, the like more common like Spanish usage would be like a trabajo, but it has like incense, it has seed pods, it has all these interesting things, and it also has the Hecho en Mexico sticker on the back. And so I'm very, I don't know. I think there's like something very fascinating about this item because it's incredibly ordinary looking. It's like made out of like cardboard and like construction paper. But it raises a lot of questions, I think. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Henry?
Yeah, I was gonna say this is maybe my favorite from an interesting like historical what were people reading kind of perspective, but it is not so much fun if you're trying to catalog it, is what are called bound widths, so or sometimes Sammelbands in German. So there's a book on the rare books list actually that has 12 different pamphlets bound together in one volume. Modern library cataloging is not designed to handle that. It is a whole beast of its own. But these are really interesting to me, even if it's stuff that's like not particularly rare, to see like, oh, what did somebody feel like was worth preserving? What did they want to, because you carry a pamphlet around with you in your pocket, right? But if you have a small volume of like 4 or 5 pamphlets, you can also carry those around. So figuring out like who made this, who was interested in these things, why did they combine them in the way that they did? Sometimes you'll see examples that have been like very probably bound by the person themselves, where it's not very well bound. The edges aren't trimmed, so they're all different sizes. So there are a lot of different examples of that. The one with 12 different pamphlets in it is one of them, but it's something that's I think common in Mexico and in Latin American countries as well in rare books. So that's just really neat thing. Like, oh, this is some sort of creation in the process of reading.
Great, thank you for that as well. thanks both for answering that question. Any other questions? We have some time. I'm looking on YouTube too, so none at the moment.
What kind of software do you use for digitization?
That's a great question. So we do have a digitization lab, which is managed by uh somebody else. For digitization, I don't, Henry, you might be able to talk about this more. I will say that right now for collection management, I would love for us to have a more standard CMS. So right now we use bpress for our digital collections. So that link that I sent for the Hojas Volantes is actually in our bpress instance. As far as the digitization process goes, you know what, Henry? I'm gonna let you take that away.
Um, I should say because we have a lot of different 3D objects and things that like you have to zoom in a lot. Ryan O'Grady, who digitizes things for the entire libraries, not just us, but we're very grateful he digitizes things for us. Often just uses a camera and like photo editing software. I think he's one of the few people with like an Adobe license in the libraries. We do have a scanner that is like pretty powerful in our reading room that I've used to digitize things for like interlibrary loan, or if somebody just wants a page of something, and that functions. But often, again, just because of the nature of the collections, and even with books, it's hard to sometimes with you have like these old crinkly vellum covers that won't really lie comfortably, and you have to really say, okay, this is such a scanner job. This is a Ryan job. Ryan, we're sorry in advance, but thank you.
Yeah, I should say that the scanner in our reading room it's a kick scanner, so just a document stand.
Thanks for answering that. So Nathan's aware my archive doesn't have anything digitized. So I'm currently trying to input everything into archive space right now for public finding aids, which has been a multi-year project, and I feel like this is going to last another several years before I'm done with archive space and can even think about digitization projects.
Yeah, I will say I'm very lucky to have inherited a very healthy archive space instance. So, um, and it's definitely coming from previously being more of like a liaison librarian, honestly, using archive space is a joy compared to like Sierra or the like back end of an ILS. So, but it's still not great. I feel for you.
Were you gonna say something, Selena?
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I feel like archive space is like the best solution I have right now. I'm not sure what else to use. It's really nice because at least in Texas, we have a statewide repository for finding aids. And so theoretically with archive space, you can just spit it out into an EAD format, but I haven't really messed with that setting yet.
Good luck. In Ohio, our centralized finding aid repository was axed. So we managed our own.
So thanks so much for that question, Selena. And I see we have a few more folks on YouTube right now. Pues si tienen una pregunta, pueden ponerlo en el chat. If you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat in YouTube right now, and I'll relay it. But in the meantime, I do have a question. Speaking of digitization, from a researcher's point of view, so what's your policy on taking photos of the material in your collections?
I feel like, yeah, Henry, you should answer this one.
I was gonna say as far as scanning things like pamphlets and things that are usually scanned, we follow the interlibrary loan rules that our interlibrary loan librarian has, which are generally 30 pages. If it's more than 30 pages, we might say, okay, we'll put this in our digitization queue. It might be a month, maybe, depending on what our other schedule looks like. But um, I'm not sure about photographing things. I don't think we've had very many requests for people to say, can you photograph this for me? It may just be that it's hard to imagine something that isn't on paper and what that might entail, or even that that's a possible thing you could request. But I think most of our requests are just for 2D textual materials.
I will say that for an undergraduate researcher recently who was working in New York, part of our conversations were like helping him with his archival question, but also talking through a little bit of how archival research works. And so I did actually take some photos to explain what I meant when I was trying to express, that the finding aid may go down to a box level, but a box contains this many folders. And so when it comes to the archival side of things, we have to have sort of a reasonable amount of things before it just becomes like we don't have the people power to scan a box for you, for example. I will say that photos in the reading room are welcome for research purposes. Yeah, I think that covers most photographic means. And yeah, I have occasionally, I think that it hasn't come up yet, but I'm sure that it will, with some of the three-dimensional items in the Realia collection, for example. Just to give folks a sense of what I'm talking about. One example that I didn't include today is that like a beloved collection item is a Guadalupe aerosol can. It is like a air freshener that has like a image of the Virgin of Guadalupe on it. That is in our collection. And so if I was I'm trying to explain that to you now, but I wish I had a photo to show you instead. So that would be a welcome use of photography.
Michelle, I will say we did a couple of years ago, we had an exhibit called Journeys of Faith, which I can link to because it's digitized. And we did a 3D view all around the can, all around several different items like that, where it's like it's really hard to get a sense of like the dimensions if I'm just telling you about it.
I actually have the link right now. I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, yes. I was curious about that. That sounds fascinating. Aerosol
Yes.
can.
Yes.
Well, and just to follow up on this too, I mean, oftentimes when we have these archive presentations or chats, right, most of the collection is simply just 2D, right? It's papers. And so what I think is particularly unique about this collection that you're describing is like the ephemera, right? There's a lot of 3D material and especially art, which I think is really interesting. So that, like this aerosol can. Oh, wow. Nope. The link broken. Oh, yeah.
Let me try and fix that.
I'm just curious, is it rose scented? Like what's in the aerosol can?
We have never sprayed it, but we do have a rose scented rosary that we have given to students to explain, like, you can't just like look at this and say, I have encountered this. This was also for 9 a.m. class. So it was like very much like helping students engage, say, this smells like roses, right? What does it smell like? And people are like, this smells like my grandma's house. So I would be interested, but I don't know if anybody's ever sprayed from that can.
I do ask folks not to in the reading room, just to be an archivist about it. Oh, it's working now. Okay, good. I was also there is one particular item in our art collection. It's a large textile again of Guadalupe, and one thing about it, it has the Mexican flag and the American flag. It's a very interesting piece that I think is definitely was meant to be in somebody's home. But it still smells. I tried not to. I've only opened it like once. I don't think it gets taken out a lot, but it does smell like grandma's house. Like it's wrapped in tissue and it still really smells lovely and soft and floral. So
I see it now. It's listed under souvenirs. It says 20% free, Arlita Guadalupe. That's fascinating. Yeah, I've never seen anything like that. So you truly have everything relating to Mary, which is pretty phenomenal.
our motto is never enough about Mary. So yeah, maybe we take it too far. We do have salt and pepper shakers, but not
Well, that's
really,
awesome.
not related to Mexico, but
Still. So we do have a couple comments in the chat from one of our members of Historians of Catholic Mexico, Hiscat Mex, from Deborah Balbuena, and she just says, without doubt, regarding the Basilica of Guadalupe, there's so many archives to explore and that have value, right? Have worth. And she's just thanking you both for your experience and for the links that we're sharing. So thanks so much from her.
Thank you. We do have a lot about Guadalupe, and we have a decent amount related to Our Lady of San Juan de los Lagos as well as some smaller shrines. But yeah, I mean the bulk is about Guadalupe for sure.
Well, that's great. You have something about San Juan de los Lagos too. Could you describe a little more about that? Or what do you have in the
Yeah,
collection?
actually, in fact, if you go the link to the broadsides collection, there are multiple engravings of San Juan de los Lagos. There are holy cards, there are postcards. Yeah. I'm trying to see. In fact, some of the broadsides that are in this collection are, we believe, we're pretty sure that they are souvenirs from pilgrimage to those basilicas.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I just brought up that link too. I'll take a look at that more
Yeah.
detail right now. Great, thank you.
I will say most of the text is very much just general veneration, exhortation, that sort of thing. It's not necessarily it's a primary source. So it's very much front side image of Our Lady of San Juan de los Lagos. Backside is sort of prayers and devotional kind of language. So there are a few examples of those.
And I see when then you were talking about art earlier too, right? I mean, beyond Mexico, I mean, we kind of think about greater Mexico in our organization, right? So do you have anything in particular tied to like the Chicano experience, Mexican American interpretations of Mary or the Virgin of Guadalupe?
I would say that we have a lot of that, specifically in art and archives. And in fact, there's a whole lot of things that I sort of was like, well, that's really more diaspora. I have to set that to the side. But I did want to include like that Amanda Lopez photo, as well as some of the other photographs that we have that really are sort of centered on the Chicanx experience and about sort of Guadalupe as, like this center of like identity formation. So in a word, yes. And a lot of those are, of course, more contemporary. And actually, I had a really great conversation with Dr. Jansen about, I was preparing to teach a class sort of related to Guadalupe and to sort of like the history of colonization in the Americas and indigenous agency and all those things. So most of what was pulled was from archives and from art that were produced by Mexican American creators. So
Great, thank you for that. So we have about 8 minutes left. I've been kind of hogging up the space right now. So if there's any other questions or comments for the remainder of time now.
I'm just like, how big is your staff? You have so many resources.
I feel like I'm talking a lot. You go ahead, Henry.
I was gonna say I'm trying to count in my head. So Bridget, Michelle, and I are the curators for the 3 areas of the collection. We have an additional 3 staff. Am I counting correctly? 3 staff, and the Marian Library Director. But with all that we do and with all the collections, and we're actually located in 3 different spaces. 2 different spaces in the library building, then a space across the street where all of the art is, or most of the art. Sometimes we bring things over to the library, but then bringing things back and forth is its own, I don't know, time suck, I guess. So yeah, we have, I would say, but even with the dedicated curatorial areas, there are still there's still a lot of overlap because we do so much. We have so many different audiences. We have like people coming in, we have children coming in for our Christmas exhibit, and we have activities for them, and we have research fellows, and we have classes, and we have people just writing in to be like, so tell me what you have about Mary, which is also like, well, what are you interested in about Mary, and that. So a lot of different things. Yeah, Michelle, if you're anything.
No, you're not forgetting anyone. I would just add that we do have a excellent fleet of undergraduate student employees that help us man our service points, which is very important. And we also do have like half of a graduate assistant that we split with the International Marian Research Institute / religious studies. So we do have a little bit of extra help, but oh, we should also add that we split a marketing and outreach, like a designer who really helps a lot when it comes to exhibit design and producing lovely wall clings and publications and all sorts of things. So
Thanks for the question, Selena, and thanks for those answers. I'm seeing if we have any other comments or questions in YouTube. It doesn't appear so. Well, I think with that being said, we've had a pretty robust discussion, and as well as a presentation. So I want to just think it's time we can start closing if that's all right, unless there's anything else you two want to add before we wrap up. Well, go ahead.
just thank you all again. That's all.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you again to both Michelle Jennings and Henry Hanley from the University of Dayton Marian Library. We're so glad to have you here today, and looking forward to sharing this the YouTube link with our members and then beyond. Right, so I'll share with both of you two after the presentation today. But thanks everyone for attending, and thank you so much again for a wonderful presentation. And have a great evening, everybody.
You too.